story. 1. The new kid's nightmare. I transferred to Riverside High School in Oregon during my junior year. Starting at a new school midway through high school was brutal. Everyone already had their established friend groups, their inside jokes, their routines.
I was the outsider looking in. The worst part of my day was lunch.
Unlike seniors who could leave campus, juniors were trapped in the cafeteria for 45 minutes. I dreaded that walk through those double doors, carrying my tray, scanning the crowded tables for an empty seat that didn't exist. On my first day, every single table was packed. Kids laughing, talking, completely absorbed in their own worlds. I stood there like an idiot, my palms sweating against the plastic tray, feeling dozens of eyes glancing at me before quickly looking away. That's when I spotted them. In the far corner of the cafeteria, 2 guys sat alone at an otherwise empty table. They were identical twins with dark hair and olive skin. Something about them seemed off, but I was desperate. I walked over and asked if I could sit down. They exchanged a long look before one of them nodded. Yeah, sure. As I sat down, I got a better look at them. They were definitely identical, down to the same black hoodies and worn-out backpacks. The one on the left introduced himself as Marcus. The one on the right was David. The conversation started normally enough. They asked me where I transferred from, what classes I was taking. But there was something in the way they looked at each other, communicating in that silent twin language, that made my skin crawl.
I pushed the feeling aside.
Beggars can't be choosers when you're friendless after school. I was surprised when Marcus texted me. They wanted to hang out that night. It was a Friday, so I had nothing else to do. There's this cool spot we know, the text read. Meet us at 9 p.m. by Riverside Cemetery. We'll show you around. I should have trusted my gut right then. Who suggests meeting at a cemetery at night? But I was lonely and stupid, so I agreed. At 8:55 p.m. I left my house and walked the 10 minutes to the cemetery entrance. The October air was cold and fallen leaves crunched under my feet. The street was deserted. I texted Marcus that I was there. We're already inside, he responded. There's a trail that leads to a small lake.
Really peaceful spot.
Just sent you the location. A pin dropped on my phone, showing a location deep in the woods behind the cemetery. Every instinct told me to turn around and go home, but I'd already come this far. I didn't want them to think I was scared. I climbed over the low stone wall and entered the woods. The canopy overhead blocked out most of the moonlight. I used my phone's flashlight to navigate between the trees, following the GPS pin. Branches scratched at my jacket.
In the distance, an owl hooted. Marcus, David? I called out, my voice sounding small in the darkness. No answer. I kept walking, checking the location. I should be close. Guys, this isn't funny.
Then I heard them. Footsteps, but they were behind me, not ahead. And they were slow, deliberate, like someone stalking prey. I spun around, shining my light into the darkness. Hello? The footsteps stopped. My heart was hammering now. Something was very wrong. I started walking back toward the cemetery, towards safety. The footsteps resumed, matching my pace, then they broke into a run. Grab him! Someone screamed. It was David's voice. Hands seized my neck from behind, fingernails digging into my skin.
I couldn't breathe.
Whoever had me was strong, trying to drag me backward. I thrashed wildly, pure adrenaline flooding my system.
My elbow connected with something solid, and the grip loosened just enough. I broke free and ran. I ran harder than I'd ever run in my life, branches whipping my face, my lungs burning.
Behind me, I could hear them crashing through the undergrowth, shouting at each other. But I was faster. I'd run cross-country at my old school. I didn't stop until I reached the cemetery wall, vaulted over it, and kept sprinting until I was 3 blocks away. When I finally stopped, gasping for air, I checked my neck. Long scratches ran down both sides, some of them bleeding. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone to call my parents. My dad wanted to call the police immediately, but Mum suggested we document everything first and report it to the school. We took photos of my injuries, screenshots of the text messages showing they'd lured me there. On Monday, I went straight to the principal's office. With the evidence and my testimony, Both Marcus and David were expelled by the end of the week. My parents made me block their numbers, though I'd already deleted them from my contacts. But the story doesn't end there. About a week later, I woke up freezing. My window was wide open, letting in the cold October night air.
That was weird. I never opened my window, especially not at night.
I got up to close it, my bare feet cold on the hardwood floor. As I reached for the window, I looked down. Below my room, there's a section of roof that juts out, creating a ledge about 6 feet below my window. My dad had always told me that in case of fire, I could climb out onto that ledge and jump to the yard. I shut the window firmly and locked it. My door was slightly ajar, which was also strange.
I could have sworn I'd closed it before bed.
My heart started racing. I pushed the door open wider and called out for my parents. No response. They were sound sleepers at the far end of the hall. I walked down the dark hallway toward their room.
I needed to tell them someone had opened my window.
But as I passed my door again on the way back from their room, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The door wasn't just slightly open anymore. It was half closed now. In the 60 seconds I'd been gone, someone had moved it. I stood frozen in the hallway, my hand on the doorknob of my parents' room. Should I check my room? What if someone was in there? What if they were behind the door right now? I pushed the door open just an inch and peered through the crack. At first, I didn't see anything. Just my dark room, my desk, my bed. But then movement caught my eye. Behind the door, pressed against the wall, I saw the silhouette of a person. I screamed.
I screamed so loud that I woke up the entire neighborhood.
My door slammed shut, and I heard the window sliding open again. My dad came running out, and we both burst into my room just in time to see someone's legs disappearing out the window. My dad ran downstairs and outside, but whoever it was had already jumped from the ledge and vanished into the night. The police came. They took a report. I told them everything about Marcus and David, about the woods, about the expulsion. But without proof of who had entered my room, there was nothing they could legally do. They advised us to install security cameras and keep all windows locked. For 2 months, I barely slept.
Every sound made me jump.
Every shadow looked like someone lurking. But slowly, as the school year progressed and nothing else happened, the fear began to fade. To this day, I'm certain it was one or both of those twins in my room that night.
I don't know what they were planning to do. And honestly, I'm glad I never found out. I learned my lesson though.
Trust your instincts. If someone gives you a bad feeling, there's usually a reason. Story 2, the substitute freshman year. Spring of 2018, last period gym class on one of those heavy, storm-threatening days where the sky turns yellowish grey and the air feels electric. Our regular gym teacher, Mr. Peterson, was out sick. The substitute was an older man, maybe late 50s, with grey hair and cold blue eyes. He introduced himself as Mr. Hartley. When he called attendance, his gaze lingered on me a beat too long. I was 14, but I'd always looked older. I was used to getting double takes from people who assumed I was 17 or 18. But the way this substitute looked at me made my skin crawl. He stared, then checked his roster again, then looked back at me.
"Emily Richardson?" he asked. "Here," I said quietly. He smiled.
It didn't reach his eyes. After taking attendance, Mr. Hartley disappeared. He told us to practice volleyball drills, then just walked out into the hallway. For 40 minutes, we basically had free reign of the gym. Some kids actually practiced volleyball. Most just sat around talking on their phones. When the bell rang, everyone headed to the locker room.
I went to my locker and spun the combination.
24, 632. I'd opened this locker hundreds of times. It didn't open. I tried again. 24, 632. Nothing. I tried 5 more times, increasingly frustrated. Other girls were already changed and leaving. The locker room was emptying out. Finally, I had no choice but to go find the substitute. Mr. Hartley was in the gym office, sitting at the desk. "What's wrong?" he asked when I knocked. "My locker won't open," I said.
"I need my combination verified." "Oh, of course." He pulled out a binder from the desk drawer, flipped through some pages.
Give me just a minute to find the master list. I waited outside the office while he searched. A few minutes later, he emerged with a piece of paper. Let's go take a look. To my surprise, he followed me into the girls' locker room.
I'd expected him to just give me the combination at the door.
The last few girls were finishing up at their lockers near the entrance. Mr. Hartley and I walked past them to my locker in the back. He tried my combination. It didn't work. He tried again, then chuckled. Well, isn't that something? He tried a third time, failed. Each time he tried, he'd glance at me and laugh like this was all just amusing. Then his hand landed on my shoulder. Don't worry, he said. We'll figure this out. He tried the combination again, his hand still on my shoulder. When it failed again, I felt his hand slowly sliding down from my shoulder, moving lower toward the small of my back. I jerked away.
It's okay, I can wear my gym clothes home. Wait, let me try one more time, he said, reaching for the lock again. I grabbed my bag. No, really, it's fine. I need to catch my bus. He tried the combination again.
This time, the locker opened with a click. Mr. Hartley smiled at me. See? All fixed. Then he walked away, his footsteps echoing in the empty locker room.
I heard the door close behind him. I stood there for a moment, my heart pounding.
Something about this felt wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on exactly what. I quickly changed out of my gym clothes, threw everything into my bag, and headed for the exit. The lights went out. Complete darkness. The girls' locker room had no windows, and with the storm outside, not even a crack of light came under the doors. Hello?
I called out.
My voice echoed off the tile walls. Silence. I fumbled for my phone in my bag, turned on the flashlight app. The weak beam barely cut through the darkness.
I needed to get to the back exit, the one that led outside to the parking lot.
It was closer than going back through the gym. I started walking, my footsteps too loud in the silence. The locker room suddenly felt massive, maze-like. Rows of lockers cast long shadows in my phone's light. Then I heard it.
A shuffling sound.
Like shoes on the tile floor. I froze. Who's there?
No answer. My hands were shaking so badly the phone light was jumping around.
I turned the corner toward the exit and stopped dead. In the dim light, I could see a figure standing at the end of the row. Just standing there, watching me. It was Mr. Hartley. The power went out, he said calmly. I wanted to make sure you could find your way out. Everything in my body screamed at me to run. He was between me and the exit door. His posture was relaxed, casual, but something in his eyes looked hungry. I'm fine, I said, my voice cracking. I'll just go back through the gym. I turned and ran. Behind me, I heard him say, Wait,
it's not what it looks like.
But I didn't stop. I sprinted through the darkness, one hand on the lockers to guide me, until I found the door that led back to the gym. I burst through it into the slightly less dark gym, then out into the hallway. The lights were on in the hallway. Everything looked normal. A few students were still at their lockers. I could hear the sound of the custodian's cart squeaking somewhere nearby. I walked out of school in the rain, soaked within seconds, and walked the 2 miles home instead of taking the bus. By the time I got home, shivering and dripping water all over the floor, I'd convinced myself of what happened. That substitute had deliberately changed my locker combination. He'd gotten me alone in that locker room on purpose.
And when I was trapped there in the dark, he'd been waiting for me. I never told anyone.
Not my parents, not my friends, not the school. I was 14 and scared and ashamed, like somehow I'd done something wrong. Like somehow I'd led him on by looking older than I was. I carried that secret for years. It's only now, as an adult, that I realize I should have reported him. That he probably did the same thing to other girls. That my silence might have protected a predator. If you're reading this and something similar has happened to you, please tell someone. Don't make my mistake. Story. 3. The basement practice room. Junior year, I was in the school band. Madison High School's music program was one of the best in the state, and being in band was actually considered cool at our school.
I played tenor saxophone, and I was pretty decent at it. Our band director, Mr. Chen,
had a straightforward grading system. attend class, complete your weekly practice log.
And you got an A. Simple, but toward the end of the second quarter, I'd slacked off.
I was missing 2 practice sessions, which dropped my grade to a B. For someone planning to apply to competitive colleges, a B in band was unacceptable. I stayed after class to talk to Mr. Chen. He was a nice guy, young, probably only in his late 20s. He seemed reluctant when I asked if I could make up the missed practices. "I don't usually allow make-ups," he said, tapping his pen on his desk. "But I suppose you could come in during lunch tomorrow and practice in one of the storage rooms downstairs. 30 minutes each."
That would cover both missed sessions, I agreed immediately.
The band room was on the second floor, but below it, in the basement, there were a series of small practice rooms. They were basically closets with music stands and chairs, used mostly for storage now. The next day during lunch, I grabbed my saxophone case and headed down the stairs outside the band room. The basement hallway was dimly lit with flickering fluorescent bulbs. It smelled like old carpet and wood polish. Rows of doors lined both sides of the hallway, each leading to a different storage room. I picked a room about halfway down, one that had a chair and music stand already set up. I closed the door behind me to muffle the sound, set up my sheet music, and assembled my saxophone. For about 5 minutes, I actually practiced. I ran through some scales, worked on a tricky passage from our concert piece, but then I got bored and pulled out my phone instead. I was deep into scrolling through Instagram when the lights went out. Not just my room. The entire basement went dark. The only light came from my phone screen, casting an eerie blue glow on my face. I stood up, fumbled for the light switch, and flicked it up and down. Nothing happened. Great. I'd have to tell Mr. Chen that the power was out down here. I opened the door, using my phone as a flashlight. The hallway was pitch black, except for one thing. At the far end, near the stairs, one of the doors was open. Light spilled out from that room, a harsh white light that didn't make sense if the power was out. Then I heard something.
A dragging sound.
Like something heavy being pulled across the floor, and breathing.
Ragged, labored breathing, followed by grunting. Animal-like grunting that made every hair on my body stand up. I watched as a large plastic storage container was shoved out of that lit room into the hallway.
The dragging stopped. Every instinct I had screamed at me to stay quiet, stay hidden. I quickly turned off my phone screen and stepped back into my practice room, closing the door as silently as possible. My heart was hammering.
Who was down here? A janitor, maybe?
But why would a janitor grunt like that? And why was only their room lit up when everything else was dark?
I stood in the blackness of my practice room, pressing myself against the wall, trying to control my breathing.
The basement was supposed to be empty during lunch. That's why Mr. Chen had sent me down here. Minutes passed.
5, 10?
I couldn't tell. My phone was still in my hand, but I was too scared to turn it on.
What if the light gave me away? Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to get out. I had to get back upstairs.
I slowly opened the door, just a crack, and looked out. The hallway was still dark. I turned on my phone light just for a second to orient myself toward the stairs. My hand was shaking so badly, the light danced across the walls. I heard it again.
Closer this time.
The breathing, the grunting. I stepped out of my room and started moving toward the stairs as quietly as possible. 1 step, 2 steps, 3. Then I heard a door creak open behind me.
Not far behind me. Maybe 2 or 3 rooms down. I panicked.
I darted into the next closest room and shut the door, standing in complete darkness again. My chest was heaving. I tried to breathe quietly through my nose, but it felt impossible. That's when I felt it. That sensation you get when you're in a room with someone else, when you're not alone. I lifted my shaking hand and pressed the button on my phone to light up the screen. For half a second, the room illuminated. Someone was standing in the corner.
Less than 5 feet away from me.
A man tall, wearing dark clothes. His face was in shadow, but I could see his body, see him standing perfectly still watching me. I didn't think. I didn't hesitate. I lunged for the door, my fingers scrambling for the handle. Behind me, I felt movement, felt a hand grabbing at my shoulder.
Fingers brushed my jacket. I yanked the door open.
The hand grabbed me again, trying to hold the door shut. But I was already halfway out and adrenaline made me strong. I pulled with everything I had. The door flew open. I stumbled into the hallway and ran. I ran for the stairs, taking them two at a time, not looking back. I burst through the door into the main music hallway, where the lights were still on, where students were walking to class, where everything was normal. I ran straight to Mr. Chen's office. He was eating lunch at his desk. There's someone downstairs.
I gasped, out of breath.
In the practice rooms, in the dark.
He grabbed me!
Mr. Chen's face went pale. He immediately called security. 2 security guards went down to investigate. They were down there for maybe 10 minutes. When they came back up, they said they'd found evidence that someone had been moving equipment around, but no person. The basement lights were back on. The power had apparently been cut at the breaker box in a utility closet down there. Someone had deliberately turned it off. The security footage from the stairwell showed me going down during lunch period. It showed me coming back up, running, but it didn't show anyone else. The basement hallway itself had no cameras. I filed a report with the Dean of Students. They increased security patrols. They installed new lights in the basement. But they never found out who was down there. To this day, I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't run. I don't know what that person wanted, whether they were stealing equipment or planning something worse. All I know is that I've never been in a basement practice room since, and I never will be again. Story. For the break-in senior year, my friends and I thought we were invincible. We'd pull stupid stunts just for the thrill of it. This particular stunt was especially stupid. Jake, Chris, and I decided we'd sneak into the school at night. Not for any particular reason, just to say we did it. Just to feel that rush of adrenaline from being somewhere we weren't supposed to be. We knew there was a basement window on the north side of the building that had been broken for months and never fixed. The window was below ground level, accessed by a small stairwell surrounded by a short metal fence, easy enough to hop over. It was a Friday night in October, around 11 p.m. We met up a block away from the school and walked over together, keeping to the shadows. The parking lot was empty.
No security car in sight. You sure about this?
Chris whispered. Too late to back out now, Jake said, grinning. We hopped the fence and climbed through the window. It was tight, barely wide enough for us to squeeze through, but we managed. We dropped down into the school basement, using our phone lights to see. The basement was a mess. Old desks stacked against walls, boxes of files, broken equipment. Nothing interesting. We split up to explore different areas. I wandered toward what looked like an old boiler room, shining my light around at the ancient machinery. Behind me, I heard footsteps. Jake?
I called softly. Yeah, came the response.
The voice sounded weird, muffled. Let's go upstairs. This is boring. Okay. I followed the sound of footsteps toward the main area of the basement. The figure ahead of me moved toward the stairs leading up to the main level. I followed. At the top of the stairs, he opened the door. We stepped into the main hallway of Lincoln High School. Everything was dark except for the red glow of exit signs spaced along the walls. The hallway stretched out in both directions, disappearing into shadow. Dude, this is really creepy, I whispered. But cool, he replied. Something about his voice was off.
Too quiet.
But I pushed the thought aside. We walked down the hallway together. The sound of our footsteps echoed off the lockers. I need to hit the bathroom, he said, and turned into the boys' bathroom. I waited outside, leaning against the lockers. My phone vibrated.
I pulled it out and saw a text from Chris. Where the hell did you go?
I typed back, upstairs with Jake. 3 dots appeared immediately. Then, what do you mean? We're both in the basement. Where are you?
My blood turned to ice.
I looked toward the bathroom door. If Jake and Chris were both in the basement, then who was I following?
I heard the stall door slam inside the bathroom. Not a normal close. A slam, Jake? I called, my voice shaking. Chris? No answer. Then I heard laughter. Low, echoing laughter coming from inside the bathroom.
It didn't sound like anyone I knew. I started backing away from the bathroom door.
My heart was pounding in my ears.
I screamed into my phone, "Get up here, now!" I turned and ran back toward the stairs. Behind me, I heard the bathroom door slam open. Footsteps followed me. Fast footsteps. I hit the stairwell door at full speed and nearly fell down the stairs. At the bottom, I could see the glow of phone lights. Jake and Chris were coming toward me. "Run!"
I screamed. Someone's in here, run! I didn't have to tell them twice.
We all ran for the broken window, practically diving through it. Jake went first, then Chris. I was last. As I pulled myself up to the window ledge, I looked back. A figure stood at the bottom of the basement stairs, just standing there, watching. I couldn't make out any details in the darkness, just a silhouette. I scrambled out of the window, scraping my arms on the broken glass.
We didn't stop running until we were 3 blocks away from the school. What the hell happened?
Jake gasped, doubled over and breathing hard. I told them about following someone I thought was Jake, about the bathroom.
About the voice. So someone was in there with us the whole time.
Chris asked, his face pale in the streetlight. Yeah, and they knew we were there. We stood there in silence for a moment, catching our breath, trying to make sense of it. Then Jake noticed something. "Look," he said, pointing back toward the school. In one of the first-floor classroom windows, we could see a figure. They had their hands pressed against the glass, staring out at us. At this distance, we couldn't make out their features. Just the outline of a person, watching. "Let's get out of here," I said. "We never reported it." What would we even say? We broke into the school illegally and someone else was in there too. We'd get arrested. To this day, I don't know who was in that school.
A homeless person? Another trespasser?
A security guard who decided to mess with us? Or something else? All I know is that I've never broken into anywhere since. And I never will. Some places are empty for a reason. And some places are never really empty at all.